Welcome back to the Michigan Football Network. And once again, it is a beautiful Wednesday. However, it is sort of an unfortunate Wednesday because the football season is officially over. The Super Bowl just happened this past Sunday. And if you joined us for our Saturday Super Bowl special, that was a lot of fun. And some would say more fun than the first half of that Super Bowl. With that being said, definitely. I think it was a solid game. Things started to kind of open up in the second half, but not necessarily what we were hoping to see offensively from the Patriots. But I mean, personally, I kind of knew this would happen, and I know we mentioned it, on Saturday. Like the Patriots were one of the uh, had one of the easiest strength of schedules of any Super Bowl team to make it to a Super Bowl ever. So like, and they played the Denver Broncos without Bo Nix, so they kind of had, I don't want to say cakewalk, but they didn't have it as hard as the Seahawks did. I mean, they had to play the Rams three times and the 49ers twice, and that's just their own division. So, with that being said, personally, I had a good time at the Super Bowl. I hope everybody else did too. I know there's a lot of discourse over the halftime show, but if you're a normal person, you don't normally watch the halftime show that intently anyway. So, with that being said, I think I probably saw a total of 27 seconds of the halftime show, which is about my average. So, the game itself, though, was pretty decent. I mean, I think that's the best way to put it. We called a few things. First of all, Kenneth Walker MVP. I think pretty much everybody on the show on Saturday thought that would be the case. And it was him or Sam Darnold, right? Because we all knew Seattle was going to win the
I
Super
said
Bowl.
JSN, but he was a
Oh yeah,
ghost.
true. Yes, he was. And I will
I'm like, I'll
say,
hold
I
my.
mean, Christian Gonzalez was so good in that game.
Yeah, like, and I remember saying like, I know he's great, but I just figured, and Seattle did it to an extent. They put JSN in the backfield. I'm like, I know they move him around to create mismatches and whatnot. I just thought they'd use him more. They didn't, but they didn't really need to. So
Hmm.
yeah, like I knew there was a chance. I know one of my bold predictions was over 100 yards for Walker, so I'm not shocked he did what he did. But unfortunately, I was the lone wolf on JSN for the MVP prediction, and yeah, you win
Well,
some, you lose some.
if you were a betting man and JSN got that MVP, you would have won a lot of money. So you also, had, the odds were not in your favor necessarily with that one. So I don't think it's that necessarily crazy that it didn't pan out, but like you said, I was too surprised that he only had, I think, what was it,
It was like
27,
34 yards or something like that.
27 yards on four
27,
catches.
okay.
So, I mean, not a lot going for him. And to be fair, Sam Darnold missed him on an 80-yard touchdown to start the game. So, uh,
Yeah, as someone who also bet the over, I was pretty mad at that play.
yeah. And, going into the half, I was over at my girlfriend's dad's house, and she was basically saying, like, or he was saying, like, this might be the lowest scoring Super Bowl ever. And I was like, I don't know about that. I don't know if you remember the Patriots Rams a couple years ago, but that was even worse than this. Which personally, I know a lot of people are complaining about the game, but I'm not that mad about it. Like, it was a relatively decent playoff game. I mean, we all knew who was going to win. So I guess going into it with that in your mind, it makes it a little less fun. But I don't know. It was good football at the end of the day, I think.
Yeah.
But with that being said, just to kind of go over the statistics of the game, Sam Darnold, 19 for 38, 202 yards and a touchdown, no interceptions, only sacked one time. So, they did a good job of keeping him clean. He did not necessarily have the greatest game, eye test wise, but he did enough to win the Super Bowl. So I'm not gonna, be mad at him there. And then Kenneth Walker, the Super Bowl MVP, 27 carries, 135 yards, no touchdowns. The only touchdown for the Seahawks offensively, at least, was to AJ Barner, the tight end, who also had four catches for 54 yards. Cooper Kupp, 6 for 61, was the leading receiver for the Seahawks. Now, if I would have told you Mac Hollins was the leading receiver for the game. Before the game, you probably would have called me crazy. But he indeed was 4 catches for 78 yards and a touchdown. And I mean, the second half, I feel like was a bit better of a game. You know, the Patriots offense started to get something going. And then it seemed like right when they got it going, he threw that interception. So it was like I was sitting there, I think it was the third quarter, and I'm like, okay, the Patriots scored a touchdown. They're starting to drive on this drive. You know, the Seahawks didn't score the last time around, so we might see this turn into a fun game at the end. And then I don't know what the hell Drake May saw because he threw it up in the air, basically right to Julian Love. I mean, wasn't even really in the vicinity of his receiver. So that one, confused me a little bit. I know he had 2 picks, but he also threw 2 touchdowns, 295 yards. So, as a second year quarterback, I wouldn't say he was terrible. I will say, though, Seattle made it very hard on him because he was sacked 6 times. Okay. And his, rookie left tackle, Will Campbell, respect to you, bro, but you didn't look that good in the game, unfortunately. So there's going to be some things that he's going to want to work on. And he's a rookie. So, being a rookie left tackle and you're playing in a Super Bowl, I'm sure there's a lot of, jitters and things to go with that. And then, last but not least, the Patriots rush or run attack really just did not do much. 37 yards by Drake May on 5 carries was their leading rusher. So not great on that front. But a couple things that we did get right in our bets, before we move on. Kenneth Walker, 80 plus rushing and receiving yards. Kenneth Walker over 72 and a half rushing yards. And that was about it for me, unfortunately, because like I mentioned, not a lot of receiving production, I guess is the best way to put it. So didn't really get any of my bets to hit, unfortunately. But do you have anything to add to that, James, before we move on to our next segment?
No, like I was kind of hinting at before, and as you mentioned, I don't think this game was a bad game. If you like, um, I will just call it the totality of football. Like it was two good defenses. It was I want to see at least 2 punts that were within the 5. Like special teams matter. Seattle going into the fourth was winning 12 to nothing. So I know I tweeted out, and obviously you saw if you follow me. I'm curious what the score would have been if it was the Lions, because I know sometimes Campbell doesn't like taking his points. So but yeah, they were up, 2 possessions going into the fourth, and then in the fourth, all hell broke loose because obviously New England had to play much more aggressive. But I didn't think it was a bad game. I know I saw a lot of people on social media say it was a boring game and whatnot, but I mean, if you like defense and special teams, I mean, those are aspects of the game. It's not just fantasy football with offense, putting up, 70 points. But as a whole, I enjoyed the game, much like you. I don't think any of halftime. I think once the clocks at halftime hit 0, I ran to the shower and got a drink and whatnot because unfortunately I have to be to work at 4 a.m. So I was not going to wait until after the game to do all that. So yeah, not a protest or anything, just life. Um, but yeah, so like I have no idea how that went. I know that was a big talking point, and I've seen people on both sides, but whatever. But as the game in terms of how the game went, and it like you said, or like we said on the show on Saturday, Seattle dominated from end to end, whistle to whistle, whatever the hell you want to call it. And even when the Patriots did start putting up more points in the fourth quarter, it was mostly against softer, I won't quite say prevent, but softer defenses and coverage where Seattle was just wasting the clock. I did see some Patriots fans say, well, he had like 230 yards just in the fourth quarter, but I'm like, come on, there's a reason for that. But but yeah, like unfortunately, as you mentioned with our bets that we talked about, I did not hit on any of them because of the lack of JSN. I'll just say that. I had him on almost all of my parlays. So,
Mm-hmm.
oh well, you win some, you lose some. Uh, yeah, I just don't think the game was as bad as some people said it was. But I had seen a fair amount of people mentioning that it was just a defensive game, almost like a pitcher's duel in baseball, or like a 1-0 game in hockey. It's like sometimes watching great saves and great defense is also fun, especially if you're around for the old school like Ravens and whatnot. Like it's fun to watch Ed Reed and Ray Lewis. So
Yeah, and I definitely agree there. There was kind of like we mentioned with Christian Gonzalez, it wasn't a boring game. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't like, and I say Christian Gonzalez because man, he was making plays like for at a
yeah,
as a corner, he was doing things where the whole Super Bowl party was like, damn, like that was nice when just by batting the ball down or whatever the case. And I think a lot of the times people think defense means boring. And it can at times when it's like, oh, you get a 2 yard run, an incomplete pass, and a punt. It's like, okay, that's boring. There's not like a big play happening. But when there's 6 sacks on one guy, 7 total in the game, 3 turnovers, and a defensive touchdown, it livens up the game a little bit. So, I had a lot of fun, and unfortunately, football season is over. But that means the offseason has begun. And with that being said, that is a perfect segue into our next conversation, which is college football in Michigan and Michigan State. It's the same talking point today. They both lost a coach that means a lot to them in the trenches. Unfortunately, Michigan State lost their new O-line coach, Al Netter. He's heading to the New York Jets. And you know, he barely even was a Michigan State Spartan. So I guess you can't really even call it a loss if it wasn't a an ad. So he just kind of said, "Oh, never mind, see ya." Which we see happen all the time with assistant coaches or smaller roles. When you're offered a role that you've been looking for at a place you've been looking for, you're gonna take it because in this business, a lot of the time you do have to look out for yourself. Unfortunately, as unfortunate as that may seem, I know a lot of people might be upset, like, "Oh, we made a commitment and didn't honor it," but I almost guarantee you the other coaches completely understand. And it's really not even a big deal with them. So, with that being said, Michigan's loss, though, is a big one in my opinion, and I think everyone's opinion at this point. Lou, Lou Esposito, the defensive line coach, is heading to the Baltimore Ravens, which is a great pickup for them. Big loss for Michigan as he's been here for a few years now. And he is I don't want to say, one of the best necessarily D-line coaches in the entire country because that would mean that I know all of them and I'm not going to sit here and act like I do. But I do think he is one hell of a coach. And as we've seen throughout the years with Michigan football, our defensive line has been a strong point almost every single year. So, and that's not always, with NFL draft talent right away. Sometimes he molds those guys into NFL draft talent. So totally understand why the Baltimore Ravens would want him. And it sucks for Michigan. It's a big loss, but hopefully we can, replace him pretty quick. But with that being said, do you have anything to add before we move on?
yeah. Actually, you segued that perfectly, just because he was our D line. He was Michigan's D line coach for the last several seasons. But with Winningham coming over, he brought along Lewis Powell, who was the D line coach at Utah, and Powell was going to be a D end coach, with Esposito being the D tackle coach. So I'm assuming Powell's just going to take over overall totality D line coach. So we are still left in good hands, but it is still a big blow. I know Esposito was huge on the recruiting trail and whatnot. So it still sucks, but hopefully it can be at least mitigated a little bit with that. And then but as you said, like when you have a chance to go to the NFL, you take it, and especially franchise with a historic defense, as I just mentioned in the last segment, like the Ravens. So obviously Ray Lewis and Ed Reed aren't there, but to be on a staff that has Kyle Hamilton and all those guys up there, um, they're in good hands over there in Baltimore with him.
Yeah, for sure, and I definitely agree. It is nice that we brought over the Utah defensive line coach because, like you said, it does make sense for him to just kind of slot right into that spot and not even really have to look for somebody else. But with that being said, that is actually a great segue for our Detroit Lions segment today, because they might lose someone that they just added, similar to Michigan State. So. As much as it pains me to say this, Mike Kafka has been talked about a lot when it comes to Seattle's offensive coordinator position, because their uh, offensive coordinator Kubiak went over to the Las Vegas Raiders to be their head coach. So they're looking for an offensive coordinator, and I mean they just won the Super Bowl. And if Mike Kafka gets offered the job, similar to Netter for Michigan State, he's got to take it because it's a step up in a spot that he wants to be, and I think the Lions would totally understand. Because if you think about it, we passed him over for our OC spots, so I can't be too mad at him. You know what I mean? It does suck, but I
No.
fingers crossed, hoping and praying that we do hold on to him because personally, that was a big sticking point for me after we hired Petzing. Like I do like Petzing, don't get me wrong. I wasn't necessarily all negative about it. And if you watch the show, you know that. But with that being said, I loved it way more once we got Kafka. So if we lose Kafka, that would be a big loss, and especially to Seattle, that would sting.
Yeah, unfortunately, you are breaking this news to me. I did not know Kafka was looking at other jobs, but I get it. I actually prefer Kafka over Petzing, but that's just me. I mean, obviously, the Lions front office personnel interviewed both and made their choice. So I was really excited when we got him. I hope he stays, but as you mentioned, um, if you have that opportunity, you tend to take it. I mean, there's only 31 of OC jobs in the league, so more power to him, but I do hope he stays.
Yeah, I do too. And also, just to be clear, this is a rumor. This is not something like he has been interviewed necessarily yet for the position, but it is a rumor that there is mutual interest. So we'll see how it goes. But like I said, fingers crossed and hope and pray that we can hang on to him. With that being said, our last segment of the day is a fun one. We are using the new um, be a GM mode on, excuse me. Um, oh my gosh, I'm somehow blanking on the name of
Well,
the
in a moment,
website.
my phone put this. Stick to the model.
There we go. Sticktothemodel.com, which I'm sure most people have seen on Twitter the last few days. They have this cool thing called Be a GM, where you basically go through the entire offseason as your team's GM and you get to do what you want. So I figured it's the Super Bowl just happened. It's the offseason. Why not get right into it, right? And kind of, use the steam of the football season ending to kind of get our juices flowing. So, with that being said, um, we are both just going to go ahead and run through our, free agency. We're not going to go farther than that right now because that's just kind of where we're at in the offseason. I don't want to go into mock drafts quite yet. But with that being said, I'll go ahead and start it off. And ours will probably be very similar, I am guessing. And that's why, I figured it's not going to take too long, I don't think. Um,
No.
but with that being said, the first thing that I did, which okay, I'm going off the assumption Taylor Decker is retiring with my
Yep.
mode. Okay, so what I did is I went ahead and cut him just to get that money on the books, basically. So I cut him to clear about $20 million. And then I went ahead and restructured, which I basically said exactly this a couple shows ago. So no surprise to those who watch the show. But I restructured Jared Goff and added $36 million to the cap space. I restructured Amon-Ra St. Brown, $21 million added. Restructured Penei Sewell, $14 million added. I restructured Ali McNeil, $15 million added. So in total, adding after the negatives, adding like $90 million or something crazy to our free agent
Yeah,
pool.
that will free up
86
88
million.
million.
Okay, yours was 88. Mine was 86. I
Oh,
think
I
you
say I'm
must
like I
have.
just did it off to the side here just to have.
Gotcha.
Um, the only other move um that I made that you did not in terms of restructuring is I restructured Reed, DJ Reed,
Gotcha.
um, because in my
Honestly,
opinion
the go ahead.
he was just a little underperforming and using just the base. I didn't play around with the numbers and stuff, but just using the base model that they have, it would free up an additional 9 million.
See, and the only reason I didn't do that is because it makes it harder to cut him, and I think after this season we will probably cut him,
Fair
based on
enough.
how he's played. So that's the only reason I didn't do that because I thought about it, and then it came to me like, well, I'm adding more dead money in the end, so and it doesn't really help too much right now. Because I think with every move that I made, we have more than enough cap space to roll over into next season to feel
True.
comfortable. So with that being said, I also made a trade. I don't know if you made any
Ooh.
trades,
Nope.
but I made a trade and I've been making this trade kind of often in these sims. And I think it's a fun one because of the David Montgomery rumors. Okay. And call me crazy. I do think it wouldn't be that hard to replace him in either the draft or free agency this offseason.
Picked a
And
bad day for the shirt.
true. um, but uh, I I'm not saying we should trade him. I'm just saying if the rumors are true that he's unhappy and
Yeah.
all that, this is what I would do. So we talked about Drew Petzing before, and he's one of those guys that likes to use a lot of tight ends. Okay, and for me, I traded David Montgomery to Pittsburgh for Darnell Washington and a fifth round pick. Okay.
I
Call
don't
me
hate that.
cra- Call me crazy, right? I think that's really good value. I think that's a good young tight end. And
He's
him,
huge
Lapo-
too.
he is huge, and that's exactly my point. He is exactly what the Lions love to use in their O lineman, but he can actually catch and run and do all that stuff too at a high level. So that intrigues me a lot if they're willing to part with him, and I think they would be potentially because they do have Pat Freiermuth and Jonnu Smith on the books. I would have traded for Jonnu Smith. The only reason I didn't is because he is due $4 million more than David Montgomery, and partially this is a cost cutting, money saving move. And then we still get a fifth round pick. So do I necessarily think he will get that much? I'm not sure. I do kind of feel like partially the reason I don't think the Lions trade him is because he's probably only going to get about a fifth round pick. I could maybe see a late fourth. But with this model, the trade was accepted, so I'm going to run with it. Um, with that being said, I did do a few re-signings, not a lot though. You might have more re-signings than me. I only made three re-signings. I re-signed
Ooh.
Roy Lopez at
Yep.
7.9 million for 2 years. I re-signed Amik Robertson at 1.5 million for 2 years, and I re-signed Jake Bates, just retaining him at 1 million for a year. And the only reason I didn't re-sign more guys like Rock Ya-Sin and those kind is because they just were asking for too much money, in my opinion. I was not willing to pay Rock Ya-Sin $8.5 to $9 million per year like this
Yeah, I saw that.
suggests, which I don't necessarily think that's going to be the case. I think he does re-sign in Detroit for probably a 2 year for like 5 million each. Just because, look, I love the simulation. I'm not downing it at all. But it does have some issues, in little ways, which
Yeah.
is nothing to complain about necessarily because this isn't made by some big conglomerate. It's just honestly a guy on Twitter who did a great job with making this. So,
Oh, really?
I
If that's
yeah,
the
it's
case, they
it's
did a fantastic job.
yeah, it's crazy, man. Like it's nuts how good it is. So I'm not gonna, nitpick over or a couple
Yeah.
things. And on with that being said, as we go into free agency, some of these things are gonna sound like I might have overpaid or underpaid. But in some instances, paid what I think they're worth. And that might have been over or under what this model said. So with that being said, um, I went ahead and signed Tyler Huntley to a 1 year deal for $4 million because we need a backup quarterback. He's young. He's a Pro Bowler at one point, which I know Pro Bowler, but you get my point. He showed he can come in and make something happen. And then I went ahead and replaced David Montgomery with Brian Robinson on a 1 year deal for 4.5 million, and that's about 2 million less than Montgomery gets. So at the end of the day, you still save money and you get Darnell Washington and an extra fifth round pick. So I think that's a win. And then you could even draft another running back with that fifth round pick and have kind of a four headed rushing attack if you count Vaki. But with that being said, I also signed Tyler Higbee, the tight end, to a 1 year deal worth 3.5 million. I signed, and this is going to be the big two. I signed Elijah Vera Tucker to a $6.7 million deal per year for 3 years. So The reason I did this is because I don't think Tyler Linderbaum is going to accept what they're asking or what they say he's going to accept on here. So I didn't even go after him. I felt that was way too much or way too little money. And I'm just not willing to pay what I think he's probably going to get, which is probably like 22, 25, maybe even 28 million, depending on who, uh, signs him. However, I think Elijah Vera Tucker, he's young, he's versatile, he's shown he can do it. He can play tackle or guard, so it kind of helps us out, considering Decker retired. I didn't really feel like I could sign a free agent left tackle that, is worth the money. So I went ahead and did this because think about it. Worst case scenario, Sewell plays left, he plays right. We have the exact offensive line that we have right now. Maybe we draft a center in the third round. We could also move some things around. He could play left guard, right guard. He could play tackle, like I said. So it gives us a lot of options with like Ratledge and Frazier and all those guys. So I like this for the value and the versatility. Um, I would have rather drafted a pure tackle or signed a pure tackle or a pure center, but for the money, it just wasn't available. So this is what I went ahead and did. And then Trey Hendrickson, I signed on a 1-year deal for 18 million. This is the one that I don't think is going to happen. Okay. Trey Hendrickson is probably going to get $30 million on the open market, if not more, simply because he's asking for that much from the Bengals. And that's the only reason why he's not going back. So it's like,
According to this app, I had them 2 years at 15 million each.
see, and that's the thing. I overpaid according to the app
Yeah,
on
yeah,
purpose
he's
because I'm
easily
like,
going to get 25 to 30.
yeah. And I
This,
don't think we'll afford that.
this was the exact thing when I text you before the show. I'm like, I use the model, but I'm like, some of these, like, don't get me wrong, as you mentioned, there's a couple flaws, but it is still a phenomenal totality. I really am enjoying it. But yeah, according to the app or site, whatever, um, he was willing to accept 15 a year. So I'm like, if that's the case, then yeah, please, no
And
problem.
really, honestly, the reason I signed him is because we're hearing a lot of Max Crosby to Detroit stuff right
Yeah,
now, which I don't see happening, man. He's
no,
getting so
no
much
chance.
money, and like even in this model, which sometimes the trades are a little off, I offered a first and a third and a player, and they still wouldn't take it. And I think that's probably what it's going to be when it comes down to it. Now, do I think Brad Holmes would definitely not make that trade? I'm not going to say that he definitely wouldn't, but I just don't think it's going to happen based on everything that we know, based on how he's even looked at the edge position the last few years. I think he would rather just sign Trey Hendrickson even for the same amount of money.
100%.
Like if you could tell him you can have Max Crosby for $30 million or 35, whatever he's making, and all these picks, or you can have Trey Hendrickson for 30, 35 million. He'd go, oh, I'll take Hendrickson all
Yeah,
day. It
no,
might only
you
be a
get
1 year
to keep
deal,
your
but
picks. We still need all these other things. Like, yeah,
yeah. You could draft not literally, but you could draft a replacement DN for Trey Hendrickson in that draft with the pick you would have traded from Crosby. So I think
correct.
all in all, that would just make the most sense. And then with that being said, to continue, I also signed Matt Milano, the linebacker from Buffalo, to a 1 year, $6.5 million deal. I did this because I let Anzalone walk, which I do think the Lions will do. And Matt Milano, I think, is better than Anzalone is right now. Very similar players, but I just think he's a better version. Very similar ages too, so that's why I gave him a 1 year deal. And I don't think this is like a lot of money by any means. So I would do that, and he would slot right in for where Anzalone was in our starting lineup. And as we know, our linebacker core is kind of weak right now. On contract, all we have is Jack Campbell and Derek Barnes currently. So Malcolm Rodriguez is not even under contract, which I did re-sign him as well on a 2 year deal for $2.8 million per year. And I think that's a fair deal. And he might not be a starter, but he should be a heavy rotational player for us this year. And then moving on to our defensive backs to wrap it up, I signed Roger McCreary from the Rams for 3 years, 1.5 million per year. Do I think he'll get that money? Probably not. I think he'll get a little bit more than that. But again, with the model, I just took what was given. Um, and then I also signed Asante Samuel Jr., the corner, on 1 year for 1.5 million, just because I think he's a high ceiling, low floor, or I'm
Yeah,
sorry, high ceiling,
low risk.
low floor. I think there is some risk. That's kind of what I'm getting at. I think
For
there
1.5
could be,
million?
not for 1.5, but just in general, like
Oh
he
yeah.
he might not make the squad, at the end of the day. Like genuinely, I don't know if he would make the roster after everything's said and done. So with that money, I'm totally fine with it. And then also I signed two safeties, and there's a big reason for this, okay? Uh we all know Kirby Joseph and his knee problems, and they are causing a lot of issues for the Lions' future right now. And I think signing some young safeties for cheap would make a lot of sense given what we saw last year. Brian Branch coming off a torn Achilles. I think we just need depth and we need youth and we need guys that can play at the end of the day. Guys that have played a lot of snaps. Like, I love Thomas Harper. I love Daniel Thomas. I just don't know if I feel comfortable with them being the guys we roll out week one. So, with that being said, I signed Andre Cisco to a 2-year deal, only 26 years old, $2.5 million per year, and then I signed Cam Curl from the Rams for 2 years for $2.5 million per year. And I think both of those are steals. I honestly think those players probably get a little bit more money on the open market. But with that being said, that is my run at the Detroit Lions free agency if I was their GM. And that leaves us with $33.3 million to roll into next year's cap and to sign anybody if people were to get injured or whatever the case. So I do think that's pretty solid. I didn't go out and make any huge swings, I guess, other than Trey Hendrickson, you could call. But personally, if the Lions did this, I would be ecstatic. But with that being said, you have the floor, my friend.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, like the unused cap will roll over, and then not only that, um, a lot of our moves are similar, so I'm not gonna like repeat. And I already mentioned signing Trey Hendrickson. There's no use in me saying, "Oh, I re-signed Jake Bates and Rodriguez." Um, but I did also touch on the safety issue. Um, I tried to go what I think is more realistic, and I bargain hunted. And Ifatu Melifonwu is a free agent, and I signed him for just 1 year, 1.7. And he's someone that knows the city, knows the team. I don't think it would be too much of an adjustment for him to learn the system. Obviously, he hasn't played under Shepard, but I don't know how much the defense has changed since. Oh, did I freeze?
Nope.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Um, I don't know how much the defense has changed from Glenn. But yeah, so I got him on the cheap. Trey Hendrickson, as I mentioned, and then the only other two, I would say, big moves that I made. I'm looking through my list here. Yeah, I'll say three big moves. As I went out and I signed Devin Lloyd, the linebacker from Jacksonville, um,
Wow.
with uh, with Anzalone leaving the team because I'm assuming we're letting him walk. He is still under 30, but he has taken plenty of snaps. He, I don't quite want to say faded, but he got off to a much better start to the season than how he ended. But it just could be wear and tear, or I don't know. But to be honest, they don't have another linebacker, in my opinion, with the skill set of a Jack Campbell. So I think we would ask him to do a little less here. So maybe that'll go towards longevity, but either way, he's a guy I would definitely look into. If Jacksonville will let him hit free agency, to be honest, I think they do sign him before that happens. But he's listed as a free agent in this app, so I went for it.
Honestly,
Um,
like that is the only one that I think will not happen, and here's why. I think he's going to get a lot of money, and I know we're going based off of this
I gave him
simulation. So,
13, just for the record, 3 years, 13 a
oh,
year.
okay. Well, I mean, I think that's about what he's probably 13 to 15 somewhere in there. I could see him getting a little bit more maybe. But yeah, no, I mean, for that price, I think it's realistic in terms of what he might get. I just don't know if um like I guess my question is I like it. I like it. It's just I guess I'm wondering like how much cap you have left over and everything when all said and done, which I know you'll get
When
to.
everything is
Um,
said and done, I have 17.9, which
okay.
also keep in mind about 11 and a half to 12 is the average free, or not free agent, is the average draft class. So then we would roll over after signing our draft picks. approximately 5 million.
Okay, so that's I think the discrepancy with ours is that extra 13 given to Devin Lloyd. Honestly, it's almost exactly the difference between our two free agent
Yeah, I'm
classes.
like I didn't try to lowball him completely, but I did. Like I guess I don't think he's going to hit the market, but I find a
Hmm.
linebacker core of Lloyd and Campbell to be very interesting in my opinion,
Ooh,
especially
man, if
when we
that were our
say that.
linebacker core, buddy,
Yeah, especially
good
since
luck
we're
running the ball.
adding, and then also just because in fictitious land we are also adding Trey Hendrickson, so adding Lloyd and Hendrickson to this defense, I think would be pretty nice. And then in addition to that, on a 2-year, 9.5 million a year, this is probably the extra 9 million I cleared up by renegotiating Reed's because unfortunately, as I mentioned, I don't think he's been playing very well. As I gave a 2-year, $9.5 million per year deal to Jamel Dean, corner from Tampa
Mm.
Bay, because I think we need some corner help, and I do like Terrion Arnold. I know there's for whatever reason, a fair amount of haters out there. I know he's got to stay healthy, which he couldn't do this year, but when he was in there, he played fairly well. But between his injuries, Rakestraw's injuries, Reed just not playing like the player we paid him to be, I wanted to get a veteran. I didn't want to try to draft yet another player and hope it works out. So I felt like that was a fair price range for him. Um, and then, do you have any comments on that before I go into my last?
I will say with Dean, I do think he'll get quite a bit more money than that, but we will see. Because he was someone that I was eyeing too, and then I clicked on it and was like, I just don't know if I can be like, okay, yeah, we got Jamel Dean for that little amount. But again, I don't think it's that crazy that the Lions would go after him, though. I know we were, going after him before when he hit free agency. So I like it. I do like it. The only thing is, like I said, I think it's a little light on the money for the realism of it. But like we said before, we're
I
going
can
based
agree
off
with
this.
that. I think he'll probably get 12 or 13 to be honest, but I also think Hendricks will
Wait,
get
I think I heard you incorrectly then. How much did you say you gave him?
I give him 9.5.
Oh, I don't know how. I thought I heard three. I'm like, damn,
Oh,
that seems like
three
a little.
years, 9.5 a year.
Okay. That makes sense.
Three
Okay,
years,
that no,
9.5 a year.
that I'm with. Yes,
Okay.
that's valid.
I was gonna say I'm like he might get a little more, maybe like 12, but I'm like I also think Hendrickson will get way more than 15. But that's like I
Hmm.
said, just using the app wise, using this app, this is how I'll build the team. So I mean, there is some suspending the belief.
I do
Um,
think that's a respectable offer though for Dean. I don't think that's really that's not Hendrickson for 15. I will say that much.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, like like some of these, like I feel like I said, Lloyd for 13 a year. I'm like I feel like some of these are mostly fair, except for maybe Hendrickson, but yeah, like it's still a fine tool. And then the only other like key name guy, and to me it's actually a luxury pick, but when I had about 28 to 25 million left in cap, I just couldn't scroll past the name and not at least offer something. Is Shaheed, the receiver from Seattle. Between him being a return man, his just overall receiving ability and speed, him being on an offense with Gibbs and Jameson is very up to me. And if you look at our receiver depth, um, for example, depending on if you resign him or not, Khalif Raymond is a free agent. So we are going to be looking
mhm.
for, if we don't resign him, we will be looking for another depth receiver and a return man. And this is, in my opinion, kind of an upgrade in both categories. I know we still have Tesla, obviously, but this league has injuries. So if
Mhm.
one of JMO, Tesla, or um, St. Brown, sorry, brain fade, go down. Shaheed, and to be honest, Shaheed's probably going to be number three over Tesla, anyways. But Shaheed would fill those roles very nicely, as well as give us a return man in the special teams game.
See, and I do like that. It's funny because I completely neglected the wide receiver position entirely. And that's because my thought is Dominic Lovett might be able to step up and take that Raymond role as a returner at least. And I do want to clear more targets for Tesla as well. But I also think the Lions might be able to grab a receiver, fifth, sixth, seventh round, similar to how we've done in the past. And I'm not saying go get an Amon-Ra in the fourth round or anything, but
Yeah.
go get a depth guy. But yeah, I'm definitely not against Shaheed. I wonder what he will get on the open market, considering he
Probably
was
more than what
really
I
good.
signed him for.
What'd you sign him for?
2 years, 7 million a year.
Okay, I don't think that's that bad though. And my question with him is like he was great with New Orleans as a receiver, but then he went to Seattle and just didn't really do anything as a
Yeah.
receiver. Like he was a great returner, but they didn't really include him in the offensive game plan at all. And that just kind of perplexes me because it's like, okay, statistically, he did basically nothing for Seattle as a receiver. So I'm just curious what money he will get. I think 7 is respectable. I could see anywhere between 6 and 12, depending on where he
Yeah, I'm
signs.
like, and I can see that, especially if you're, I think it's Tennessee that has like almost infinite cap room and they need a receiver. So I mean,
Hmm.
I wouldn't, I wouldn't do 12, but I can definitely see a team doing 12. But yeah, like I said, even with this, even with Lloyd and Dean and Hendrickson and Shaheed, I'm still at 17.9 million of open cap. So, um, this is what I would do at least my first run. I had a lot of fun doing this, so I will probably just sit on my couch and do this another 3 or 4 times easily before the next podcast. Um, so it will be interesting to see what other combinations and whatnot we can come up with. Because I did not do any trades. I did not even look at that aspect. I did not do the draft portion. If you've played around with the app, there's an entire draft portion. Um, so yeah, I'm really looking forward to also re-digging into this and seeing what else I can come up with.
Yeah, and we definitely will, plan on using this a couple more times throughout the off season because it is such a cool tool. And I have used the draft portion of it, and I will say, I think the draft portion it might be the best part of the whole thing, in terms of it seems like the first round at least because I've done all the way through, but the first round at least seems like spot on for where people are talking like teams or players are going to go, because I know there's other mock draft simulations out there, and some of them are just kind of odd. Like in the first round, you'll have the Raiders pass on Mendoza, or you'll have 3 quarterbacks go in the top 3. Just like weird stuff happens sometimes. So I think this one, the draft is super solid, and kind of all the way through. I mean, I felt like I wasn't getting those huge high value names like you'll sometimes get in those mock drafts simulators, and like the fourth round you'll get a guy who's like a first rounder, and I know that happens all the time, so it's nice to see that doesn't seem to happen with this. And it's really cool because you can do trades and all sorts of things before and during the draft. So with that being said, that is all we have for the show. So this was a bit of a quick one, but there's really not too much to cover. So figured we would throw in the GM simulation to have some fun. And with that being said, if you need any new Super Bowl memorabilia, specifically, hit up Fanatics. The link is in the description. Click that link; it'll help us out. And as always, we appreciate you guys for watching. You can catch me at Jace O Sweet. You can catch James at Gullet_James, and both of us at MIFB Network and MichiganFootballNetwork.com. Once again, thank you for watching, and we will see you next week.